The stone walls are sweating heat, not metaphorically, literally. The sun has been baking Rome since morning, and now the narrow street holds that warmth like a sealed oven. You're pressed into it with everyone else, shoulder to shoulder, ribs to elbows, breath stolen by bodies that don't mean to crush you but do it anyway. You can't step back, you can't step forward, you can barely lift your hands. The crowd has turned you into furniture, and that's the first lesson. Rome does not need chains for everyone. Sometimes it just needs people. Your skin tastes like salt. Someone near you reeks of wine. A child is perched on a man's shoulders, eyes wide, taught early that some days are for watching other humans become proof. The sound arrives before the sight. Trumpets, drums, and a rhythm that doesn't celebrate so much as announce. The city belongs to whoever is coming. The noise bounces off the stone until it feels like it's inside your teeth. People cheer too soon, like they've been trained to respond on cue. Then the street changes. Conversations thin out. The air tightens. Not because the parade is beautiful, because it's about to become personal. She appears between helmets and spear points. A queen, not in the way queens exist on coins and murals, untouchable and bright. This queen is moving one step at a time, as if each step has a price. Royal fabric still clings to her, but now it's a costume Rome has forced her to wear so everyone can recognize what is being dismantled. Silk doesn't protect her. Gold doesn't save her. Those things only make her easier to consume. You see the chains, but the chains aren't the point. The point is the crowd. Rotten fruit arcs through the air. Spit. Laughter that sounds like hunger. Men shout insults that aren't clever, just loud, because Rome doesn't require imagination when it has power. A mother lifts her child higher, not to protect him from the sight, to improve it. So he learns the lesson properly. This is what you clicked for, what Rome did to captured queens, and why it was engineered to feel worse than death. Death ends the story. Death shuts the mouth. Rome wanted the story to keep bleeding in public, to keep teaching after the war was over. A dead queen becomes a rumor. A living queen becomes a moving warning sign. During a triumph, a queen is not a person. She is a message carried on legs. And the cruelest part isn't what you can see from the street. It's what she can't see at all. Because Rome keeps one thing from her on purpose: certainty. She doesn't know which door waits at the end of the route. A villa where she lives under Roman permission, a trophy with a pulse, a dungeon where she vanishes into darkness while the city keeps singing above her. A sentence carried out quickly, efficiently, like sweeping ash from a floor. She won't know until the final steps. She has to walk the entire distance with every possibility breathing down her neck. And Rome made sure the worst moment wasn't the parade, because the parade was only the hallway. Before we dive deeper into the story, please subscribe. You think you're watching a parade, but Rome is running a ritual, and rituals have stages for a reason. Nothing arrives by accident. Nothing is placed where it is by coincidence. The order is the weapon. It starts with sound because sound gets into you before sight can argue. Trumpets split the air. Drums answer them, steady and blunt, like a heartbeat you didn't ask to share. The noise ricochets off stone until it becomes a ceiling over the street, pressing down. People begin cheering before they see anything. That's not exciting. That's conditioning. Rome has taught the city to respond to certain noises the way a body responds to a command. Then the wealth comes first, always. Cart after cart, loaded with the bones of someone else's world. Coins that used to pay your soldiers, cups that used to sit on your tables, sacred objects that used to belong in temples where people whispered prayers, not prices. The crowd roars as if the gold is already theirs. You can hear the arithmetic in the cheers. And each wagon is a promise: lower taxes, fuller bellies, another year where Rome feels rich because someone else is now poor. After wealth comes the story Rome wants to tell about that wealth. Painted boards rise over the crowd like traveling walls. They show cities burning, gates collapsing, bodies falling, kings kneeling. It is war turned into pictures so even the illiterate can participate. The crowd points and laughs at images of suffering because the images have been edited to make suffering look deserved. This is portable media before paper, propaganda before printing. A moving billboard that says, "Look what happens when you make Rome work for it." Then the animals arrive, because Rome doesn't just want to show it conquered people, it wants to show it conquered distance. Lions in cages, strange birds in gilded frames, beasts pulled from climates most Romans will never survive in. The crowd gasps in wonder, and wonder is useful. Wonder softens the mind. It turns conquest into spectacle, and spectacle into pride. Rome makes you marvel at your own theft. Only after the city has cheered at stolen wealth, laughed at curated destruction, and stared at foreign animals like toys, do the prisoners appear. And notice what happens to the noise. It changes, it thins, it tightens. Common soldiers shuffle first, chained in groups, heads down, already half turned into property. The crowd barely looks at them. There are too many. Their misery is ordinary. Rome saves its silence for what matters. Because the ritual isn't complete until the crowd receives a face. A captured ruler is not just another prisoner. A ruler is a symbol that is used to command others. So the ruler is the proof that resistance had a leader. Rome keeps the royal garments visible on purpose. It wants the silk and the jewelry to survive the war so they can die in public. It wants the crown there, not as honor, but as punctuation. It wants everyone watching to understand that rank doesn't protect you. It only makes your fall easier to recognize. This is why the trophies aren't random. They are cues. Sound to summon you. Wealth to make you grateful. Paintings make you cruel. Animals to make you impressed. Prisoners to make you feel powerful. The city isn't just watching. It's being assembled into a single mood, a single appetite, a single chorus. Because when the crowd finally sees the queen, Rome has already taught them what to do with her. The parade ends where the city can pretend it becomes holy. Up the last rise, and toward the height of the Capitoline, toward Jupiter's temple, toward the smoke of sacrifice and the clean language of victory. That's the part the movies love. The general in purple, the laurel, the crowd's roar turning into a wall of sound. It looks like closure. It looks like Rome has finished the story, but triumphs don't end at a temple. They just end where the audience stops following. Because the temple is for the victor. The prisoners are for whatever Rome decides next. That's the secret Rome hides in plain sight. It can't afford to let the city cheer because the real power isn't the cheering. It's the moment after the cheering, when the crowd turns away and the guards tighten their grip. When the music fades and the sandals on stone become the loudest thing again. One when the captive realizes the parade was never the punishment, only the delivery. Rome's real strength was never just violence. Plenty of tribes could burn, raid, slaughter. Violence is common. Rome's strength was choice, the ability to decide what you become after defeat and to make that decision feel like a natural law. For a captured queen, there are 2 doors at the end of the route, and sometimes a third that doesn't even count as a door because no one sees it open. One door is death. Clean, fast, public or hidden, but final. Rome removes the problem and then tells itself it has restored order. A dead queen can't gather followers. A dead queen can't become an alternative center of gravity. A dead queen is a body, then a lesson, then a line in someone else's triumph list. The second door is what Rome calls mercy, as in mercy is often a slower blade. A villa, a house, a comfortable imprisonment where the queen is alive, fed, clothed, spoken about, alive enough to be pointed at, alive enough to be used. This is the solution Rome prefers when it can. Not the martyr, not the legend, but the trophy with a pulse. The queen becomes a living demonstration that even the highest resistance can be domesticated, reduced to dependence, forced to exist on Roman terms. The empire doesn't just defeat you, it keeps you as an exhibit. And then there is the third option, disappearance. The place beneath the city where names go quiet. A prisoner taken away while the feast continues above, the noise of celebration covering the sound of chains. No final speech, no public execution to ignite outrage. Just removal, and a person turned into absence so cleanly that even mourning becomes difficult. Because how do you mourn someone the conqueror refuses to acknowledge? That uncertainty, death, mercy, disappearance, was not a flaw in the system, it was the system. Rome understood that the mind breaks fastest when it cannot brace for impact. Pain can be endured. The waiting for pain reshapes you. And for queens, Rome added another layer to the calculus. A male king could be killed and replaced. A queen carried more than a title. She carried heirs, alliances, bloodlines, stories that mothers told children when they wanted them to remember who they were. If Rome could control that, it didn't just win the war, it edited the future. That's why what follows isn't three unrelated tragedies. It's three outcomes of the same machine. The one queen will be punished through her body, one through her bloodline, one through her identity, erased so slowly it looks from a distance like mercy. And the first queen learns the rule the hard way. Rome punishes a crown by punishing what the crown loves most. It begins the way Rome always prefers, on paper, with smiles. Boudica's husband is an allied king. He pays what he must, bows when he must, keeps the peace because peace means his daughters grow up in a world that still has their name on it. When he dies, he tries to do what reasonable men do with unreasonable empires. He writes a will, part of the kingdom to Rome, part to his children, a compromise, a plea disguised as legality. Rome reads it and laughs without laughing, and officials arrive with soldiers and the calm confidence of people who know the law is whatever they can enforce. They announce the kingdom is Rome's now. The will means nothing. The alliance means nothing. They begin confiscating property like they're collecting debts, dragging nobles from homes, seizing land that has held family bones for generations. This is not an army fighting an enemy. This is an administration harvesting a province. Boudica protests because she still believes there are rules. She is a queen. There were treaties. There were promises. She demands an audience with the Roman authority in Britain, a man whose title means collector, but whose power means owner. And here is where Rome performs its lesson. Not in private, not behind curtains, in public. They seize her in front of her people, saying they don't just restrain her, they break the image of her. A queen is authority made visible. Rome understands that, so Rome makes the authority look helpless. They bind her, they expose her to the eyes of those who used to bow. Then they flog her. This isn't random cruelty, it's governance. It's a demonstration that replaces law. The blows are loud, wet, repetitive. Each strike says the same sentence. Your rank does not protect you from our hands. Her people watch because Rome wants them watching. If you can make a queen endure this in the open, you can make anyone endure anything in the dark. Then Rome brings her daughters forward. Tacitus does not need to paint the scene with poetry. He doesn't give you ages, names, faces. He gives you the fact that matters. They are unmarried. They are taken. They are handed over. The language is cold because Romans knew what it meant without explanation. Boudica, tied and bleeding, understands too. She screams until the sound turns into something less than words, not a queen's speech, a mother's animal terror. She pulls against ropes until her wrists tear because her body is trying to do what her position cannot, stop time. This is the part Rome is aiming for, not just the pain, The meaning: Rome is turning leadership into a liability. It wants the tribe to associate defiance with the most intimate violation imaginable. It wants every man who might follow a queen to picture his own household paying the price. It wants every woman to know that protection is a story Rome can rewrite at will. It wants the crown to feel cursed. And then Rome makes its mistake. And it assumes the breaking of legitimacy will cause submission. It assumes shame will silence. Instead, shame becomes fuel. Word spreads faster than orders, not just among the Iceni, across Britain, because this wasn't an attack on one family. It was a warning to every family. And warnings, when they are too loud, stop frightening and start organizing. Tribes that had endured Rome's taxes and arrogance see their own daughters in those girls, their own wives in that queen. They come not for conquest, but for a debt that can only be paid in fire. Boudica raises an army. She rides at the front. She becomes what Rome tried to erase, a leader worth following precisely because she has nothing left to lose. Cities burn. A red layer of ash settles into the earth. Archaeologies bruise. And people die in numbers that make Roman writers flinch even as they justify. And somewhere in that smoke is Boudica's speech, preserved by Rome itself, because even enemies recognized a certain kind of rage. She says she fights not as a queen for land, but as a mother for what was taken. But even rebellion has a clock, because Rome doesn't need to kill a queen to win. It only needs to decide what she becomes afterward. Some punishments are loud. A whipping post in a public square, a city burning so bright it stains the sky. Those are the kinds of violence people remember because the memory has shapes. The Snelda's punishment is colder. It doesn't explode, it settles. Her husband is Arminius, the man Rome cannot forgive. In the forest of Teutoburg, 3 legions vanish into rain and mud and screaming. And the empire learns a new feeling: humiliation. Rome can survive losses. What it cannot tolerate is being laughed at. It will spend years trying to catch the man who made Augustus feel small in his own palace. But Arminius doesn't come with a convenient ending. So Rome does what it always does when it can't reach the target. It goes for the people the target loves. Thus Nelda is pregnant when the betrayal happens. And the betrayal doesn't come from a Roman hand first. It comes from her father, a man who chooses safety with the empire over blood. He takes his daughter as if she's an object he can trade, and he offers her to Rome as proof of loyalty. Not just her unborn child. A future sold before it draws breath. Rome accepts the gift with pleasure because it understands symbols. A captured queen is a trophy. A captured queen who carries the heir is a prophecy interrupted. They keep her alive. That's important. They do not rush to kill her. Rome is patient when patience hurts more. She gives birth in captivity. A son. A name that should have meant a lineage, a rallying point, a continuation of everything Rome fears about Arminius. Instead, the child becomes property before he becomes memory. He is held, fed, dressed, not out of kindness, but out of calculation. Rome doesn't want a corpse. It wants a receipt. Years pass. Not days. Not one terrible night. Years of waiting while the empire prepares the moment that will make her suffering useful. And when Germanicus finally earns the right to a triumph, Rome brings Thusnelda out like an artifact it has kept in storage. She is paraded through the capital. Not alone, but her infant son is in her arms, small enough to disappear against her chest, important enough to make the crowd howl. Rome's streets are lined with people who have lost fathers and brothers and sons to the same man whose blood runs in that child. The hatred isn't abstract, it's personal. Stones fly, spit, names she doesn't understand, but the tone doesn't need translation. Soldiers keep pace beside her, not to protect her dignity, but to preserve the spectacle. She must survive long enough to be seen. She must carry the child long enough for every Roman eye to register. This is what happens to the seed of your enemies. And here is the cruelty that doesn't look like cruelty if you're only watching the parade. Because the parade is just the beginning of the long destruction. The boy does not grow up a prince. He grows up as Rome's possession. Says his language changes. His world shrinks. His father becomes a story Romans tell with disgust, if they tell it at all. And when he is old enough to be useful, Rome does what it does with useful bodies. It puts him where bodies exist for applause. The arena. Sand under feet. A crowd that chews and drinks and points. A name announced, then forgotten. Another barbarian. Another fighter. Another life measured in minutes. The audience doesn't know they are watching the heir of the man who broke Rome's pride. That's the genius. That's the point. Revenge becomes entertainment, and entertainment becomes anonymity. So when he bleeds, Rome bleeds him twice. Once with steel, once with erasure. Thus Nelda disappears after the triumph. No neat record, no funeral worth mentioning. Perhaps she lives long enough to hear rumors, long enough to wonder if the boy's alive, long enough to die with the shape of his childhood pressed into her memory like a bruise. Or perhaps Rome makes sure she never hears anything at all. And that's when you realize Rome's perfect victory isn't execution. It's making sure the victim's own bloodline forgets what it was. Zenobia's chains are the image everyone remembers because it's simple. A queen in fetters. Gold turned into a leash. The humiliation you can photograph in your mind. But the chains are only the doorway. The more unsettling punishment begins after they come off. Rome looks at a defeated queen and calculates like an empire, not like a man. Execution is easy. Execution is clean. Execution is also dangerous. It turns a living person into a dead symbol, and dead symbols travel. They get carried across borders in songs and rumors. They become banners for people who have nothing else left. Rome doesn't always want that. Sometimes Rome wants a sermon. A queen who lives, but only because Rome allows her to live, becomes a moving lesson with no heroic ending. No martyr's fire, no noble last words. Just a defeated ruler walking through the world under someone else's permission. That kind of survival doesn't inspire rebellion. It drains it. It tells every would-be defier, you won't get the dignity of a clean death. You'll get the slow conversion into proof. So the mercy comes in the shape of comfort. A villa, a household, the kind of quiet imprisonment that looks from far away, almost like reward. Not a dungeon, not a scaffold, a place with gardens, a roof, servants, food that arrives on time. And that's exactly why it works. Because the villa is not mercy. It is a museum where the exhibit is still breathing. Zenobia can be visited, spoken about, pointed at. She becomes a story told over wine. Did you see her, the famous queen of the East? The one who thought she could hold an empire. Look how calm she is now. Look how Roman she seems. Look how neatly history has been folded and put away. The violence shifts shape. It becomes administrative. The kind that doesn't leave bruises you can show your people. Language first. Latin becomes the air of the house. Aramaic becomes something you whisper to yourself when you don't want anyone to understand you. Names follow. Titles disappear. Queen becomes woman. Ruler becomes wife, widow, guest, whatever label makes Rome more comfortable. And then marriage politics do what swords already started. A union is arranged, or at least encouraged, because Rome knows the most efficient way to dismantle a foreign dynasty is to turn it into a Roman family tree. Children grow up with Roman tutors, Roman habits, Roman gods. They learn Roman stories about Rome, and those stories never cast their mother as a sovereign who challenged an emperor. They cast her as a cautionary tale that ended correctly, and the city participates. That's the part people underestimate. Rome doesn't just lock you away. It invites society to digest you. Dinner parties, curious glances at the market, guests who lean close and ask polite questions meant to reopen old wounds. Was it true, what they said about your armies? Did you really think you could rule Egypt? Were you frightened when you saw the legions? As Zenobia becomes entertainment without chains. A living artifact, a prestige object, a reminder that Rome can take a person who once issued orders and turn her into a conversation piece. And the cruelest part is that this kind of defeat doesn't look like defeat from the outside. It looks like life. It looks like survival. It looks like mercy. But inside, it is the slowest form of conquest, the day-by-day replacement of who you were with what Rome needs you to be. Because Rome didn't just want Zenobia to lose. Rome wanted her to live long enough to watch herself disappear. When you step back from the individual stories, you can see the shape of what Rome built. Not a series of cruel moments. A system, a machine that turns a defeated queen into a lesson the empire can reuse. It starts with the crowd, because Rome understood what a million eyes can do that a sword cannot. A sword kills one body. A crowd rewrites what everyone believes is possible. When the city packs itself into the streets, it becomes a weapon with 1,000 mouths. It spits, laughs, points, cheers. It doesn't just witness humiliation, it participates in it. And participation is how Rome turns violence into normal life. Then comes the route, because the route is not just geography. It is a ritualized movement, a controlled walk that forces the captive to pass through stages like a ceremony of unmaking. Sound first to summon the city, wealth to make the city grateful, propaganda to make the city cruel, animals to make the city impressed, prisoners to make the city feel powerful. By the time the queen appears, the people aren't simply watching. They have been prepared. At least they've been taught what she is and what she deserves. And then the two doors, because the most refined torture is not pain, it's choice withheld. Villa, dungeon, execution, mercy, disappearance, something worse. The captive does not know which ending has been assigned to her, and that ignorance is a blade Rome holds under the tongue of every step. Uncertainty doesn't just frighten, it rearranges the mind. It makes the victim obedient to the future, even when the future hasn't arrived. After that, Rome decides what kind of warning it needs. Sometimes it needs a body lesson. Boudica, legitimacy shattered in public so the tribe learns that leadership is a curse. Sometimes it needs a bloodline lesson. Thus Nelda, the future captured and trained into anonymity until the heir becomes entertainment instead of inheritance. So sometimes it needs an identity lesson. Zenobia, allowed to live so the empire can demonstrate the quiet perfection of absorption, how Rome can keep you breathing while it eats your name. This is why so many conquered women vanish from the record, not because they didn't matter, because Rome controlled the entire pipeline of memory. What was witnessed, what was written, what was carved into stone, what was copied, what was passed down, what later historians considered proper to repeat. The silence wasn't accidental, it was engineered. And later generations helped complete the engineering because it is easier to tell stories about generals than it is to sit with the fact that empires often win by breaking women in public and then calling it order. The final Roman trick is that it didn't just erase people. It erased the feeling of erasure. The dungeon still exists. You can stand in it now. You can take a photograph where captives once waited to be swallowed by the dark. You can post it online with a caption about history. Above it, the city sells souvenirs. Along the old Triumph roads, people shop, eat, laugh. Espresso where crowds once screamed at chained queens. Sunlight where uncertainty once lived. Suffering turned into scenery. That is the long victory of empire. It convinces the future to walk over the past without hearing it. So if you're still here, understand what you're doing right now. You're refusing the last step of the machine. You're dragging names back into the light. You're saying that forgotten is not gone. If you want more stories pulled out of the dark, subscribe, and tell me which city you're watching from. And once you see the machine clearly, you start wondering how many queens never even got a name. Because Rome didn't just conquer them, it edited them out.